Welcome back, everybody, to Bourbon on the Banks, and this is my Bourbon Podcast. I am your host, Perry. Swan sitting back here with me.
I made it.
It was touch and go there for a second on night one.
It was. But thankfully, this is like a whole mile and a half from my house, so I just flew down here and I'm good to go.
Just took that cool Kentucky wind and soared on down.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we are hanging out here again on day 2 of Bourbon on the Banks. We are having a really, really good time.
Yeah, this is great, man.
This has been wildly successful, I would say. So much bourbon, so much good food. I mean, there is nothing going on here that I am not enjoying. We actually have a booth here. There's people picking up some of our business cards as well, like this gentleman right here is. You're going to make it on to next week's episode, sir.
They can see me. Right now. I'm more handsome on the air than I am in person.
Oh, there we go. My thanks, 100% of the way, by the way, to the folks at Bourbon on the Banks for reaching out to us and wanting us to be included in this fantastic event. This is... I could not have asked for a better setting in Kentucky.
Oh, this is perfect.
Than just hanging out along the Kentucky River.
Exactly.
And drinking bourbon that maybe has been made from this water source.
I mean, some of it's definitely. I mean, we got Buffalo Trace. They've got a booth down there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we got to get Buffalo Trace down here. Do you think we can get Buffalo Trace?
I sure hope so.
I would really
I
like
saw him bringing in
that
some
to happen.
Taylor. I'd love to have some of that.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, especially if it's at that Amaranth.
Oh, yeah. If they got some of that.
Oh.
Perry, I might disappear for a few minutes.
You are my official ambassador, I think, throughout everybody who is here. But one of the cool things about this is the generosity of the folks who are hanging out here, who are vendors here at Bourbon on the Banks. And we're going to start out this week's episode with some David James straight bourbon whiskey.
I'm excited for this, Perry.
I am so excited for this. Swan went down to chat with them and say, hey, we'd love to have you come over to the podcast. And, you know, understandably, they're busy. They've got plenty of stuff going on. It's a wildly busy festival.
I don't think anyone expected it to be like this, but I'm so glad it is because it's insane.
I am very, very happy that it's as successful as it has been. So they offered us up samples of their products.
Yeah, so he told me a little bit about this one when I picked it up. This is actually their newest product. They just got it. It won a silver medal in the San Francisco Spirits Contest. And the actual bottle itself has quite a bit of information on it. It's going to be 113.6 proof, so it's up there. And it's at 11 and a half years.
That's the kicker for me.
11 and a half years. That's insane. I mean, how long have they been around, Perry?
I have only really known of them for probably the last 6 months.
Yeah. And, I mean, they are putting out some killer product.
Now, let's give credit where credit's due. This was something... this is sourced.
It would have to be, yeah.
Yeah, but they make no bones about it. So on the back of the bottle, they say, we take pride in the fact that we seek out and source the finest bourbon and whiskey we can find. It's distilled in Tennessee.
I'm okay with that.
So it's a bourbon more than likely from George Dickley, which is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with that. I had a sip of it already. It's good.
You're beating me to the punch, Perry. I got to go in. The nose is good.
The nose is it's really floral. It's got a honey note to it as well that I think is really, really interesting. But overall, man, I think this is a really good product.
You know, this drinks like some of the higher rye Four Roses picks that I've had. A little bit.
I could see that.
It's got a little more of like a chocolate savory punch to it than a lot of the Four Roses has. But this is something special for sure.
I'm a fan.
I am too. They did have 4 releases on their table, so I'm probably going to have to go back with some drink tickets or a fake mustache or something and see if I can pick up some extra stuff.
I like the fact that they don't shy away from being sourced.
No, honestly, as long as you wear that as a badge of honor and you realize that there's a lot of work that actually goes into sourcing and blending, I'm all for that. Because I mean, I've done it before. I'll sit at home and I'm like, I'm going to mix a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and it's going to come out perfect. And every time I'm like, how on earth does Dixon Dedman do this on a daily basis? I don't know how he does it. I mean, it never comes out like I anticipate.
No, and I think that What's interesting to me, and I know that the sourcing has become something totally different in the past few years than it was, say, 10 to 12 years ago, where people were basically just kind of buying barrels, buying even just distillate from people, and letting it age and finding out what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
Right? But now people are able to go in, they're able to kind of craft their own flavor profile, and they're able to create something really unique and something that they find to be what they think is going to be the most successful. And it kind of seems like in this case, there was more craft that went into it.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I think that they've done a really good job of it. I'm really, really happy with this product.
Yeah, it's definitely great. I mean, it's not. I don't think their distribution's everywhere yet, and I'd love to have them on to talk more about that.
Oh, yeah,
because
for sure.
I've seen it here in Frankfurt and a couple of other places, but I know it's more of like a Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee type distribution at the moment.
Yeah.
I'd love to see this everywhere. If you see this in just a liquor store, they're doing samples, definitely go try some of it because they got multiple different releases, and they're all of really good age.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're putting on some good stuff, and especially winning some medals already. That's nuts.
I'm here for it.
Well deserved.
So, we are now sitting down with Karis from One Eye.
Oh, Second Sight Spirits.
Okay, Second Sight Spirits.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
I'm
good.
just going with Oak Eye, rather,
Oak
not
Eye.
One Eye.
Yeah. It could be One Eye after
Kentucky
you
Brew.
drink.
Well, it depends on what you're feeling in the morning after you try this.
That's true.
So we got to talk a little bit last night about what you guys have going on.
Sure.
Not only is your product good, you guys are weird. You're weird, man.
Yeah, a little
You
bit.
got strange stuff going on at the distillery. But you
Yeah.
know what? I am all here for it.
Cool.
So, let's talk a little bit about that. But first, let's talk about the product that you have
Right
in
on.
your bottle.
So this is
Absolutely.
our first bourbon. We called it Oak Eye because we're using 15-gallon barrels. So basically every one of our batches is going to be single barrel small batch.
Okay.
So that barrel is going to really dictate its final flavor profile. And we basically did that so because we're self-funded, we wanted to get product to market, so we started with a 15-gallon cask. We're building up to 30-gallon casks, and eventually 53. And this mash bill we did 72% corn, 16% wheat, 5% rye, 7% malt. Again, in a 15-gallon barrel with the number 3 char. Our barrel entry was 115 proof, which we always put on every label because we're so small. We've made every drop, and we don't want anybody to, I don't know, being this small, you always have to be legit.
You kind of do, though. I mean, there is something so sincere about a craft distillery just being 100% honest about
Yeah.
what you're producing.
Well,
I mean, even if you're not producing it, and you're
Right.
sourcing it, there are so many distilleries out there who, try to tell this story to boast what they're doing in
Yeah.
a way that is really detrimental to their product. And I like the transparency in this
Yeah.
case.
You gotta be, because the whole world now is handcrafted and artisan.
Sure.
And those words really don't mean anything anymore. So it's,
No,
you
they-
really have to show what you're doing. You got to show your work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you guys kind of appeal to the whiskey nerd a little bit because you put so much information on the side of the bottle, like including the mash bill and stuff. Because there's so many times we're
Oh.
reviewing bottles and we're like, "What's the mash bill on this? We gotta look it
What
up."
am I drinking?
I want more distilleries to do that. I mean, all the way from you guys up to Jim Beam.
Sure.
I mean, why would you not be that transparent? I mean, maybe
Yeah.
it's proprietary.
Maybe, but
Maybe.
really, by the time you get a different yeast strain and different water profile, and your still's going to deliver its own flavors. And I don't know, we came from the entertainment industry, and there was this great guy way back in the day that said, "I'll tell you exactly what I do, like every step that I do. I don't think you can do it because that's why I'm good at what I do."
Exactly.
But this is exactly what I do. And it was brilliant. So we kind of emulate that. And then we just had to take a different approach to our distillery because we didn't have the 100+ years of heritage as like our friends down here, and we were
So, but before we get into the distillery side of it,
You gotta drink
I
some
want to
stuff.
I want to talk about this product. Let me
Yeah.
just say, the finish on this, unbelievable. I said this last night. as we were trying it for the first time, I think the finish is easily the strongest part.
I do too, yeah. And
this
for the
product.
actual proof on it, having a finish that strong is pretty wild. I mean, usually it's the 100 proof up where it's kind of really hitting its stride in the finish department. This is doing a lot for the proof that it's at.
Oh, cool. Thanks, fellas.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's been interesting recently. We've been talking a lot about younger products. You know, there is that notion that, you know, if it's not at least 4 years, it's not going to be that good. There is so much merit to be brought about. Sorry, there was a dog that I got distracted by.
No, it was a good-looking dog.
There's a lot going on at Bourbon on the Banks. But, you know, this is evidence to support the claim that younger products are not bad.
Thank you.
I think this is a very good younger product.
I think society, we just need quantifiers, you know, and then your basic
absolutely.
bourbon drinker sometimes doesn't do the research, so they have to go by something, and usually age is kind of the first thing that they can check that box and say yes or no.
Oh
so.
yeah, I mean, just going to like the Pappy craze, everyone immediately thinks, you know, Pappy, they have a 23 year, I want that one.
Yeah.
And it, you know, I've had them, and it's not my favorite. I like the 10, the 12, the
Yeah.
15, and
Yep.
it's not always about getting the highest age on it. I mean, you really have to dilute it down to what do I like to drink, and this may be somebody's just like, I want this daily.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine, but they gotta reach for it, and having all the stuff on the side and the extra information is great.
Oh, super cool.
I just love how much information you guys put on there because it's really kind of, it narrows it down. So if somebody likes this, they can go find something similar too. That's
Yeah.
great.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I noticed you mentioned that you said this is what you guys were putting out because it's what you could put out now to make a little bit of money.
Sure.
Where do you guys want to go? I mean,
Of course, we're going to get into older products. Like I said, we put out our first 30-gallon barrels, and then we'll eventually move into 53. Just when two guys are self-funded, there's only so much money you can put on a shelf before your wives leave you.
yeah. I know.
So, yeah, it's a tricky game, and I enjoy our friends that can do that.
You enjoy
but-
your friends that enjoy bourbon. Yeah. No. I cannot let you go without talking about what I think and what you have called the weird aspect of Second Sight Spirits.
Sure.
I think first off, we should probably talk about the fish. The fish
yeah, fish is
should
something.
be talked about. So I'm going to open up the floor to you to talk about the fish.
Right. So, yeah, bourbon should be fun. Drinking should be fun. I think it's like the cathedrals of bourbon are some places, and that's fine. We want to be like the super cool inner cities church, like screaming bourbon and dancing in the aisles. So we started, we made a fish named Fortuna. Well, we didn't make the fish.
You made a fish. That is a new level of bourbon production where
made
you
a
got
lot of
a
things.
fish that you made.
We didn't make a fish. We bought a fish, which was a whole nother aspect of the thing. But we basically have a fish tank inside of a old fireplace mantle in our shop. And we put this background on it that when this goldfish swims around, we're putting in a bubble curtain so you can ask her a question, pull a cord, the bubble curtain will activate, the fish will move around to wherever she ends up on the background is your answer. And we've found this Indian tea leaf where you can dye the water to make it look like she's swimming in bourbon. And then when she
I love that so much.
yeah, but the
I
fun,
cannot love that enough.
and then when she dies, we got a stage in our shop, and we'll put her on the stage on ice, throw a whole wake so anybody listening can come down. We'll have a bunch of drinks, and then we'll do, we know a brass band, and they're
Oh my gosh.
willing to do a second line funeral procession to the river. We'll chuck her in, and then we'll all march back up to the distillery, and then we got friends that still do pyrotechnics, and they'll do the old Pope smoke off the top of the building. And then we'll throw Fortuna the second in there during our memorial fish fry.
And just start the second like the process all over again.
Whoa. So to memorialize a fish,
We're gonna eat all of his cousins.
Yeah, cousins. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
That
the
is
fish tank guy was
amazing.
he was a little irritated with us. He's like, you can't kill this fish, and I was like, listen, it'd be best if this fish died about every 8 months, man. So we
For
had
business
to do
purposes.
So we had to do
Oh,
some
man.
high-level negotiations, and he'll either pick out the geriatric fish or the fish that are like a little touched for us. That way
All right, Geriatric Fish is the name of my new band. Right after Bleach Broth. So anyway, Second Sight Spirits. Go and check them out if you want to have a weird time.
Yeah.
It sounds like so what this sounds like to me. I always have this idea of Harry Houdini in this like magic shop that is solely built for weird magic stuff.
Right.
That's what that's what this sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Is it just is catered exclusively to one niche?
Yeah. Well,
And but at the same time, I mean, I guess there's like a bourbon aspect to it too.
no, yeah, it was a way for us to make the bourbon more about you than me talking at
Sure,
you
yeah,
about
man.
a dead relative that I can't vouch for.
Yeah.
So the future is a great universal, and that's why Second Sight's named Second Sight, because it means having visions of the future, and then that allowed us to do more interactive stuff, so then you could get answers instead of me just talking at you all day.
It's great.
I think Second Sight might be my new favorite distillery.
You know, as much as I love seeing the giant, like back in, whenever this founded, 7 generations ago, having a fish named Fortuna that you're going to throw into a fish fry.
She's going to the river.
There's so much. There's so much good about this. Man, thank you so much for sitting
Yeah,
with us.
thanks for
Appreciate
doing
it.
this.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Oh,
Super
yeah,
cool.
Cheers.
Cool. Have fun.
So next we have the George Remus Distillery, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know your name, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And this is not just for our listeners, but for me and Swan
Well,
at
of
the same
course.
time. So,
Yeah. So my name's Robin Carnes.
hi, Robin.
Hi. AKA that Remus girl. That's
Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay. Well, yeah. All right. We already follow you on Instagram.
Hey, see,
So-
there we go. Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, that's a good sign that it's working. Yeah, so I'm with George Remus Distillery, AKA Rossville Union Distillery, AKA MGP.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
AKA is fine.
Yeah.
Because MGP is great.
yeah,
Yeah, we love their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this little cocktail that you brought us.
yes,
Tell us about it
Yeah.
because I had a sip just now.
yeah.
It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I take cocktail research and development very seriously when I come to these festivals. I love making cocktails, and this one that I made today is the Bootlegger Smash. And
There
it's
you go.
made with George Remus bourbon, which he is of course, the bootlegger, the king of bootleggers.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a little house-made blackberry honey thyme simple syrup and a little lemon juice in there as well, garnished with a sprig of thyme.
The sweetness, I think, is really what's coming through for me.
Yeah, it definitely does.
I mean, it's really, really refreshing.
Yeah.
I would love to make like a picture of this.
Yeah.
For just sitting out on the back
Totally.
porch.
I always struggle when I have to batch cocktails for big events like this because if I'm making a cocktail at the house, it's going to be like way heavier on the booze.
Yeah,
and then not
I
as
agree.
much mixer.
I agree.
But I try to batch my cocktails like that, and I think this one achieved it. And I don't really like overly sweet cocktails too. So this one I feel like is like the perfect balance of sweet and tart. And
Oh, I
it's,
totally
you know what I
agree.
mean? It's just super balanced, especially with the Remus in there. The Remus is a high rye bourbon, so it's got a little bit of both. Yeah.
So what are some of the other products that are coming out of Remus right now?
Yeah.
Because if I feel like if you were to ask the general bourbon drinker, they would be like, I don't know who Remus is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So give us a little bit of a background, not just on the brand itself, but also on the products that are coming out
Sure.
from you all.
Yeah, so thankfully we're getting a little more well-known when it comes to the Remus brand. We've been working at that brand for a while, myself included. I was actually, I started with the George Remus label back in Cincinnati about 3.5 years ago. So we're finally getting a little bit more people to know what that brand is. But the MGP distillery is really well-known for a lot of the rye whiskeys they do.
Yeah.
And so they make so many other products for other people, but the ones that we've decided to start making for ourselves, for our branded portfolio, are the George Remus, this is George Remus family, I should say. So we've got the George Remus Bourbon, we've got Remus Repeal Reserve, and then we also have a new one coming out called the Volstead, Remus Volstead Reserve.
Okay.
Saw
That
that,
one,
yeah.
yeah, that was a 14-year-old bottled in bond. Yeah,
Heck yes.
6,000
Heck
bottles only
yes.
being made. Yeah, that'll come out late November, early December. So, but with that, we've also got the Rossville Union Rye Whiskey products.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
So
Yeah, we got to try some of the cask strength that you guys had, or
yes.
the barrel proof that you put
Barrel
out.
proof,
It,
yep.
it was pretty
Really,
good.
really good.
Yeah.
You know, our rye whiskeys are really meant to be approachable for people that are not really interested in drinking rye, or that want to get interested in drinking rye.
Sure.
Ryes can be very spicy, a little harsh on the palate. Ours, we specifically made to be just a little bit smoother on the palate so that you can, you know.
Yeah, I even
Yeah.
picked that up a little bit on the barrel proof, which
Yeah.
is nuts, because usually nothing barrel proof is what I would consider approachable.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was kind of nice.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming in at 112.6, which is a pretty good proof point. But for a barrel proof rye whiskey, I mean, that's still pretty, you know,
Yeah, it's up
manageable.
there.
Yeah. But it's tasty. And then we've also got a couple other products. We've got our Till vodka, which is made at our Atchison, Kansas distillery.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really love this vodka, and I'm a bourbon drinker. And I always joke that if you don't make a face when you're drinking vodka straight, it's a good vodka. And yeah, I know. Most people don't.
No. So I wanted to try this.
Oh, you're mixing. I like it.
I threw a little bit of ale into this cocktail too.
Yeah. It could use
was
some bubbly.
Just purely me trying to see
Yeah.
what would happen.
Cool. You got to tell me how it is. Is it good?
Oh my gosh.
Do share. Oh, yeah.
It's so
You
refreshing,
just
right?
upped my cocktail.
I mean, it was just me going, hey, ale 8's real good. This cocktail's real good. Let's
love ale 8.
throw the two of them together.
No, I love it. This is the right amount of bubbly, too.
This is like me making a pitcher of cocktails
Yeah.
to go sit down on the beach.
Totally. Yeah. I'll give you my recipe.
Okay.
And then you
yeah,
just
no,
add
oh my
ale to
gosh.
it.
Oh my gosh, please do. We
Yeah.
won't share it with anybody,
Yeah.
but holy crap.
This one's just for
Yeah.
us.
Try that, yeah. So we've got a couple other products. The 8 and Sand blended bourbon whiskey is another one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
had
one's
that
for-
recently.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is really
yeah.
good.
I like to call that one the gateway whiskey. It's just easy. Yeah. And the other product we have is Tanner's Creek, which is an Indiana only product, but it's, you know, it's kind of similar to the 8 and Sand product, but the mash bills are different, but it's the same concept, like
So-
Rack House series.
What is really interesting to me is that there are products that kind of exist on the peripheries of whiskeys.
Yeah.
So you have those that are kind of in the upper echelon, really, really well identifiable. Buffalo Trace, Heaven Hill, Jim Beam, those kind of products. But at the bottom of it is some of the craft distilleries who are still doing really, really good stuff, but maybe are not as well recognized. And I feel like Remus is in there too. So if you had to sell to somebody, and I know that it's a weird thing to give an elevator pitch,
Yeah.
right, to somebody who has never had your product before. But what would your elevator pitch be to somebody who has never had Remus before?
First off, let me just say, I'm not good at elevator pitches. That being said, I mean, this is part of my job. I sell our products into bars
Sure.
and restaurants all the time. But what I would tell somebody about the George Remus is that it is historical. It isn't just a bourbon
yeah.
that we decided to make and like make up a story just to sell some whiskey.
Yeah.
You know, George Remus was a huge bootlegger, and not a lot of
Yes.
people know his story. And so when you find out that the king of the bootleggers lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he had his hands in Indiana and Kentucky and gosh, everywhere else because he was known for having really good whiskey, you know, it's not just about drinking good whiskey, it's drinking our heritage, it's drinking our history here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, he capitalized on all of the distilleries that were shut down during Prohibition. So everybody knew you went to Remus to get the good age stuff, not the bathtub gin, right?
There you go.
Not the moonshine that was, you know, colored with tobacco spit and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you, E.H. Taylor,
Right?
for making that
Yeah.
not have to happen.
But
anymore.
honestly, this is, you know, I said earlier, the 8 and Sand is like your gateway whiskey, right? But the Remus is your next step up. It's your graduation present, essentially, because it is a 94 proof, 5 to 6 year old bourbon, and it's the perfect balance of spicy and sweet. Since it's a high rye bourbon, you know, we don't stick to one specific number on a mash bill, a percentage. We do more for a profile.
Sure.
But if I can say that, we're always in the upper 20s of rye on the mash bill for George Remus.
Good.
Yeah, so it's a high rye. So like, you know, and I said it earlier, you know, you're gonna get that nice sweet on the front end, but it's gonna finish real spicy down the throat, and it's like I said, it's just the perfect balance. And I like to call it the everyday bourbon because it's perfect on its own. It's great on the rocks, and it makes killer cocktails.
Yeah,
So yeah,
for sure.
you can use it for anything.
sure.
And not that you really have to sell the Volstead, but what can we look forward to? Like, I mean, what's kind of the tasting notes on that? Have you had
I
it
don't
yet?
even know. I haven't had it yet.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you that the tasting notes are, it's going to be amazing. And
I like that.
I mean, let's be real. A 14-year-old bottled in bond
Yeah,
bourbon
you had me sold right there.
from
Yeah.
MGP Distillery, for
I'm
Pete's
here.
sake.
I'm here
you
for
know?
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're here for it. We're all here for it.
Yeah,
There's
we
only
should
going to
be.
be 6,000 bottles made, and it's going to come in a nice fancy bottle with a wooden box. It's going to be amazing. So
Can't wait.
yeah, it's all good things for
All right,
sure.
podcast listeners, I think we're going to be reviewing that here before
Oh, I
too
hope
long.
so. If I can get my hands on a bottle, we're reviewing it
Yeah,
for sure.
it's going to happen. Robin,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
You're so
for
welcome. Thank you for
sitting down.
having me on.
Absolutely.
I'm glad
It's
that
been a
we
pleasure.
were able to do some cocktail, you know, research while we were here. I'm gonna
I
have to
like
put that in
that.
my notes.
thought
I
that
really
was
do too.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Kudos to you.
Well,
I like the
all I
creativity.
did was go, hey, this would be really good with ale.
But like that's like half the good ideas that are ever made, like ever talked about, are ones that start like that. Hey, I have an
It's a
idea.
maybe. It's
Yeah.
always a maybe. So, Robin,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I am really excited about this one.
Yeah, me too, man. I've actually not had moonshine in a good long time. Long time.
Royce,
Yes, sir.
good to meet you, man.
Hey, good to meet
we,
you
We
guys.
were friends on Facebook for a long time before we actually got to sit down and chat.
Yeah, Facebook's a crazy thing, isn't it?
It's something, yeah. So this is the Neely Family Distillery Moonshine. We don't normally have moonshine on This Is My Bourbon podcast.
No, it's usually touching a barrel before we get anywhere near it, but I'm
So
excited.
pretty
At least
interesting
slightly.
thing too. Right now, we're bringing up single barrels into the gift shop, and every time we sell through one, I'm actually re-entering this moonshine recipe into that used barrel.
That's cool.
So we've got some out there now that's almost 2 years old. As far as I know, there's no, because this is never going to be, this could never be a whiskey. It's literally only a moonshine. So
Sure.
we've got some 2-year-old aged moonshine out there that's doing some really cool stuff in that barrel.
So tell us real quick about what it is that we're actually about to drink.
So what we do with this product, we use Domino cane sugar and sweet corn, which is the same recipe that my great-grandfather used. It's almost 120 years old. He was the first one of the Neelys to start adding Domino cane sugar into that mash. It gives you you get a lot of that buttery corn, the sweet cane sugar taste on the mid to back palate, and then it warms as it goes down, but it doesn't burn. And that's something you're really looking for from a good moonshine, even though we sell it at 120.2 proof. It'll burn a good clear blue flame up to your knee.
I mean, don't get me
What
wrong.
proof was that?
120,
There's no way.
I swear to God. Hey,
That's
There's
going to
no
get you
way.
in trouble,
Right.
Swan.
read
120
the
proof.
bubbles on it.
Oh my
120 proof is kind of where we exist, just as
Yeah.
bourbon drinkers. So like Knob Creek single barrel, even all the way down to like 110 with Russell's Reserve.
Big
Yeah.
fan of both of those.
But like, this does not drink like it is as high a proof as it is.
No, this is like
I-
low 100s.
I mean, would I be remiss to say I would mix this with some orange juice?
No, I would. I mean, I would even just drink it straight. It's that good, honestly.
And the key
Dude.
to it is, guys, it's all about making a good clean cut off of that still. But that triple pot distillation allows us to further rectify it, but still bring the flavors over. So we'll run it through 3 pots and then let it hit a thump keg on the way through, and that allows it to pick the flavor back up again while still keeping a lot of the cleanness and smoothness from that product.
So one thing I want to make sure that we talk about too is this interesting claim that you guys have on your standee of
Okay.
your grandfather, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it says we're back and this time we're legal. What does that mean?
So my family's been making and distilling. They were 2 different times legally, but pretty much the rest of that time has been all illegal, all from the mountains
Right.
in eastern Kentucky. So my dad was the first generation to start making it legally. I was the second generation. Now I started distilling, I may or may not have started distilling on the
Allegedly.
University of Kentucky's campus. Of course, UK
Okay,
doesn't know that.
all right.
I had a still set up over there that I had built almost 10 years ago. We started running it. We would run it through the week when we were studying. studying, then we'd take it to frat parties. I played baseball, small school down the road. We bootlegged it at those parties. It got really popular. My mom and dad found out about it, not too thrilled, sending their son to college. And my dad left the mountains to get away from a lot of that.
Sure.
And, now we're right back into it again. But they saw, I guess they thought that I had a talent for it. And my dad come to me, and we wrote a business plan up. And he said, I think this is going to do really well. And I was making it the exact same way that my grandfather had taught me. And we went legal with it and haven't really looked back ever since. So
I love the family story behind all this.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, really do.
That's what it's all about for us. When you go into our gift shop, you'll see almost a museum in the front. It's going to show old newspaper articles, old guns. I've got
Great,
my
man.
great-grandfather's original steel in there that's over 120 years old, never made a legal job in its life.
So cool.
Probably my most prized possession, but we have all that on display, and that's what we show you when you start off our tour. And then I take you in the back and show you how we make our bourbons now, all sweet mash, triple pot distilled, which nobody else in the state 100% triple pot distills their bourbons. And then I like to let it open ferment in Cypress, so we have 600-gallon Cypress vats. And then I actually grow my own yeast on site.
Do you really?
I am. I'm a big advocate. To me, you're not a real distiller if you can't work and grow your own yeast strains. So I went down to Owsley County. The only way I can make my moonshine taste like my great-grandfather's was to introduce the wild yeast strand from the mountains up here in Sparta, Kentucky, where we're at. So I go down there once a year and I catch that strand in Neely Fork at their old still site. I bring it up and we work that year-round in the distillery and introduce that into our mashes to get that same flavor into it. Now we're doing that with our bourbons as well.
Royce, thank you so much for sitting down.
Hey, thank
with
you
us.
guys.
I cannot wait to see where Neely goes in the future. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate that, man.
How are you doing, man?
Doing well.
I think you may, in my mind, have one of my favorite cocktails we've had here today.
Well, let's back up just a second
Yeah.
because I have been aching to have Stephen Fante on this podcast for a long time. Not just because you represent Limestone Branch Distillery, but also because I would think that you are one of the more, I would say, characteristic folks
Oh, yeah, you embody your brand like no other.
in bourbon brands today.
Absolutely.
Stephen, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit first off, because I don't think that a lot of people know about Limestone Branch.
There's a few people visited us,
Yeah.
about 50,000 so far a year, right around there. But you're right, there are a ton more believers to be brought on board in the future.
I think so too, but you guys have been going for much longer than the bourbon boom, right?
Yeah, it's, May of 2011 is when our shovel hit the ground. And by February of 2012, Mr. Beam took his first gold medal. He didn't even dust a still off, went straight to gold.
But Yellowstone itself, though, has been a lot longer than 2011.
One of the oldest bourbon brands in the United States goes all the way back to 1872.
So that in and of itself, I think, is good enough to represent a brand or a product.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do you guys have on the market right now in terms of Yellowstone products?
We've had several different limited edition releases, going back to 2015 when we took over the brand. And in 2015, we released a limited edition 105 proof 7-year wheat, 7-year rye, and 12-year rye. I called that one a 12-cylinder bourbon. Fired on all parts of your palate. Sweetness of the wheat on the front of the tongue, the spiciness of the rye on the outside backs of your tongue, and that old rye just hung out in the center like a hair in a biscuit.
I love everything about that.
That's
That is,
fantastic.
if you are looking for a bourbon that satisfies not only yourself but everybody else, I think that is the absolute best product.
You know the
case.
descriptors on the back of the bottle that tell you kind of the tasting notes and the history about it? That just came to life in front of me. That's fantastic.
Oh, this was like, as the author was sitting down at their typewriter
Exactly.
and they were tasting the whiskey.
Oh, it's amazing.
This was as, I would say, virile as you could possibly get with that. You guys came here, though, with a couple of cocktails.
That is true.
What is the main cocktail, though, that, as some would say, is world famous that you're offering up to the patrons of Bourbon on the Banks?
Well, today we did the Blackberry Smash, and the Blackberry Smash is the #1 selling summertime cocktail at Miners Lounge. It's blackberry puree is what we're using here tonight because of the batch mixing, but it's fresh blackberries at the distillery. And then there's lime juice, and we take and cut it down with a little bit of that Rose's lime juice, and then we take and put a healthy pour of Yellowstone Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey over that. And we add the effervescence of Ale 1 Winchester Kentucky Soda Pop to give it its sparkling nature.
I cannot argue with the ingredients of that.
None of
either.
that.
I mean,
yeah, I'm not a cocktail person. You may have converted me, to be honest. It was pretty good.
especially during the summer, I think, is
Perfect.
one of the more important parts of that.
Yeah, you don't even have to like bourbon to like the cocktail. That's great.
You guys every year come out with a limited edition
That's
of
true
Yellowstone. Over the past couple of years, it has been given gold medals.
Yeah, that 2016 limited was finished in a toasted wood wine cask. It gave 2016's limited a toasted wood finish like no other bourbon I'd ever drank. I miss it a lot.
I miss it as well.
What did he do with the cask? He took it to the cooperage, had a 1 char fired right through the center of that previous bourbon on the same day that it was dumped. Kelvin Cooperage fired for us. Embedding the bourbon into the wood, the 2017 limited edition was finished in that cask. The 2017 limited was bourbon on bourbon. It had fatter legs than Rosie O'Donnell and a longer hang time than Michael Jordan.
I don't have. That was as good of a description as I could imagine
Oh, it's fantastic.
for
beat it.
Yellowstone in 2016. Stephen, thank you so much for sitting down with us,
You're
my
welcome.
friend. If you have not yet visited the Limestone Branch Distillery in Northern Kentucky, you absolutely have to. They are fabulous in everything that they do.
Yeah.
These products that are coming out of there, they are undersung, they are underrepresented, but you guys have to go and check that out.
Absolutely. If I'm going to add anything, the minor case rye that I tried earlier, fantastic.
Oh, it was so good.
Absolutely
It was
pick up some
so
of that
good.
stuff.
For sure. Stephen, thank you so much.
You're
buddy.
welcome. Thanks for having us in.
Appreciate it. So last night, I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit rude. We had a very, very long conversation with Nate and Haley
We did.
while being told at the same time that John from the Old Pogue Distillery was waiting on us. And I saw you, John, out of the corner of my eye. I was so ready for you to hop in and chat and everything, and I apologize so much, but I am so happy that you are able to sit down with us
My pleasure.
tonight. Yeah.
No worries. I had to get on the road, and we all got to live by a clock these days.
So let me start by saying Old Pogue is probably one of the most underrated, underrepresented bourbons in the market right now.
There's only so much. There's a finite supply. Doing everything I can to fix that problem, though, I will say. We've been making more bourbon for, about
A while
5 years
now.
now.
Yeah.
Trying to bolster the inventory, but there's no sacrificing the time part of this equation. Got to wait.
One of the really, really cool things about what you guys are doing is that you are, I would say, as far from a traditional distillery as you can get, because you're just going up a hill to a house and you're hanging out, hearing about the brand and everything. Am I outdated in my understanding of the brand?
Well, it's my ancestor's house. It's I've had 4 master distillers live in that place. 2 of them were born there. It's where my distillery is. The license is registered on those premises.
Sure.
So it may be an unconventional place for a factory, and I definitely don't recommend it to anybody building a factory on a hillside. But my water source is there on top of my licensing, the history side of my family's business. It's a unique experience for customers to enter our premises driving off a hillside, a little bit of leap of faith.
What is so cool though about that is that the trek through bourbon is so unique. I mean, it is by no means one way or another. and getting to someplace like Pogue, it is 100% unique. I mean, nowhere else do you have to put on your working boots and get up that hill just to come and see what you're doing in your distillery. But it's worth it, though, right?
Yeah, I like to think so. It's a unique setting overlooking Ohio River, Simon Kenton Memorial Bridge, downtown Maysville. I really can't say there's another family-owned distillery that existed prior to Prohibition and post-Prohibition that resides on the same premises.
Yeah.
It has its challenges, for sure, but it presents a pretty nice setting.
So as far as products, though, what are you guys doing right now that is different from other people in the bourbon industry?
Well, I'd say apart from access of our property being a little bit unconventional, we're pretty traditional in our tastes. We do a 9-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. It's a small batch bourbon. And we also do a single malt rye whiskey. It's a 5-year-old product that's 100% malted rye, which is pretty unconventional in modern times. It's the oldest recipe we have, though. It dates back to 1796, according to one of my ancestors' little tobacco pouch books. It's where we dug it up. We have a good time cooking it. It's more like a European-style whiskey with the American grain. So it's a little bit of the old meets new all around.
Swan, do you want to try a little bit?
Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got to. I looked at picking up this bottle twice, and I have a feeling after trying it, I'm going to have to go pick another one up.
Good.
I know where to find it, so
Yeah.
I'll definitely go do that if all goes well, and I have a feeling it will.
We have a fun time with it. It's a sticky mess in the production side of it. Actually getting it to run through our column could be a little bubbly, but just got to run it slow and be patient with it. Creates a very different aroma, though, when you sprout a grain or germinate it.
It's very rye.
And it's 100% malted rye.
It is very, very rye, I
have to get the grain from Canada. I'll admit I would source it locally if I could find anybody to malt it up, but these days it comes from up north.
Oh, wow.
That's
I like
good,
that.
man. I like it a lot.
Just like getting to your distillery, this is seriously unique.
Yeah.
Seriously unique.
It's a little mix of the old and the new, as I said. It's aged in a char 4 white oak barrel, same as our bourbon. And we do batch just about 4 to 5 barrels of it together a year. I make very limited quantities of it on an annual basis. It's much more expensive to produce on top of it being kind of more rare grain.
I'm all for that because I know that you guys, it seems like just from the way you describe it, you're going for quality over quantity.
Certainly.
And I love that because there's a lot of people that push products out way too early.
Yeah.
And, some of them are good, some of them are just kind of but this is like, I can tell you took your time with this.
Cheers.
And you definitely hand-selected exactly what you guys were going for.
Cheers.
I think that what is important about this, too, is that you're not hearing somebody who is trying to build on something that they imagined as their legacy.
Yeah.
For John, for you, this is your legacy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, my family's been doing this for a long time.
Exactly.
I'm since the 1800s.
So this is something that you don't just have to live up to, but, you want to contribute to. And I think that this is a fantastic representation of that.
I appreciate it.
Old Maysville Club. Y'all go and check it out.
Absolutely. I know where our bottle's at, Perry. I might be picking one up here.
I know where one is too, Swan.
Ooh, then we can both get one. Great.
John, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
hanging out
My
with
pleasure.
us, buddy.
My pleasure,
Absolutely.
guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, this, though, is something that I was really not expecting with the podcast. How long have we been talking about this product?
I've been raving about it, and when they showed up, I was extremely excited.
We've been going, we have to try this distillery. We have to get them on the show. It has been something that kind of fell into our laps, though. And here we are with Colin from the Kings County Distillery. Mm-hmm. Colin, welcome on, man.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Dude, so go ahead and talk a little bit about what you are to the company. And it sounds like you are a little bit more than something to Kings County.
Kings County is my project, I guess
There
I
you
can
go.
say. I'm the co-founder and head distiller. And so Kings County is a craft distillery in Brooklyn. I grew up in eastern Kentucky, and that's how I first got interested in distilling, partly because Harlan County is a dry county, and I would
Yes.
bring moonshine from eastern Kentucky back to New York, and I would share it with people, and people were really enthusiastic about that. And so I got interested in, really, the business started with moonshine, and I would have been happy to just make kind of terrible moonshine, and I would have been thrilled and share it with people illegally. But that is not.
That's good to hear.
The federal government does not like that, and so the federal government says if you want to be a distiller, so I got a hobby still off the internet and started actually distilling, and very quickly realized that my audience in New York wanted something that wasn't really like straight up, high proof moonshine. They wanted what we now know as white whiskey, which was something that didn't really exist 10 years ago as a concept. So I kind of, and because it's illegal to make whiskey at home, I had to become a commercial distillery in order to continue this project of perfecting white whiskey, and by extension, any aged whiskey that comes from that. So the whole distillery is kind of predicated on this idea that if you make good white whiskey, then everything that comes from that will follow. And so as a distiller, I'm always interested in other distillers, white dogs, or distill it, like, raw distill it. So Kings County is, because we're sort of between Ireland, Scotland, Kentucky, Tennessee, we're sort of in this kind of melting pot city. I wanted the distillery to borrow from pot distillation from Scotch culture and corn from American culture, and we do open fermentation. We do fermentation in wood tanks. So as much loyalty to tradition as possible, but without being beholden to any one tradition. And that's kind of the story of Kings County.
I really like that, and I think one of my favorite things about you guys is I've looked at your entire portfolio of stuff that you got. You're so darn experimental.
Yeah.
I love that, because there's people that put out, in Buffalo Trace and Woodford are big on this. They do experimental collections. You guys are putting that on your main line.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's phenomenal. So, talk a little bit about, what's your portfolio look like? You've got a peated bourbon, and there's a chocolate malt. Is that right?
We have, so we kind of have 3 different tiers of whiskeys. We have a lot of what you would probably legally call flavored whiskeys. They're just moonshine infusions, but kind of like for an elevated audience. So like chocolate, a very dark, bitter chocolate whiskey. We have a grapefruit jalapeno whiskey for the summer. We do a winter spice whiskey that is kind of like a spiced rum, but a spiced whiskey. So that's one group of whiskeys. Then we have a group of aged whiskeys that are sort of between Scotch and bourbon. So our regular straight bourbon is a high malt mash bill pot distilled bourbon. We have a peated bourbon, and then we have an American single malt that would be a Scotch if it were made in Scotland, but just doesn't. That's the only aspect of the single malt rules that we don't conform to. And then we have our sort of allocated whiskeys. So we have a rye whiskey, we have a barrel strength bourbon, and a bottled and bond bourbon. And then I guess it's fair to say even beyond that, we have some distillery only things like oat whiskey. We have some agave distillate. We have actually we don't sell that at the distillery. That's like so
That's
distillery
you.
exclusive.
That's a you thing.
You gotta just ask me for a bottle and I'll give you one.
Can we have a
I'll see if I can get that to you. You can't ship that one. So
all right,
we'll find a way. It's a handoff.
Swan, we're gonna have to drive up
in Maryland.
to Maryland. All right.
Let's go.
May as well. What I love about this though is that Kentucky is not 100% synonymous with bourbon.
Right.
It may be one of the things that, when you talk about bourbon, you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's heavily associated, but it's not the end-all, be-all, and you guys are definitely proving that.
Yeah, and it seems to me like Kings County is a sleeper in the realm of American bourbons. And you really have been working in the background, I think.
I think that's a fair description, and I think that's partly because whiskey takes time to age. So I have known what we're up to, but what you're up to doesn't always, because it's not released, doesn't always get to the customer. But I think because I'm from Kentucky and I really love Kentucky bourbon, and I got to this through an affinity not just for bourbon but for the broader Kentucky culture. I think it is that respect for traditional bourbon that allows me to step away from that and say, I want to do something different, something that doesn't compete with that, but something that's nonetheless interesting to somebody who is very deep into that world. So, I think a lot of the decision-making that goes on at the distillery really falls from that point of view, which is that, is this going to be interesting to, is it going to be interesting to a novice? Is it going to be interesting to somebody who's had a lot of bourbons before? Is it going to be something that's interesting to another distiller? Even that is something that I want to make, because I feel like in the craft world, we're all kind of there's a collegiality and a brotherhood to it that that I very much want to participate in and foster.
Buddy, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's been fantastic. Y'all have to go check out Kings County.
We do.
I think they are one of the best out-of-state bourbon whiskeys.
Yeah.
And by out-of-state, I mean out of Kentucky. But, take that as you may.
I will take it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no.
For sure.
Go and check out Kings County. Cheers, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I cannot think of a better way to end out Bourbon on the Banks than with two of the best friends.
I know them.
This is my bourbon night.
We're the three best friends.
Did you say this
that
is my
anyone
bourbon night?
could have.
What?
You said this is my bourbon night.
No.
You did.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh.
Rewind it.
Well,
It's a collaboration. This is his bourbon night, okay? Let him
yeah,
have it.
I'm gonna stand by it in this case because
Sweet.
it's been a long, long weekend. But Chad and Sarah from It's Bourbon Night.
Yes, this
are
is my
here.
bourbon night podcast.
There we go. That kind of hurts
Hey,
a little.
are we recording? Because I just listened to the Weekly Planet where they recorded a whole episode and they didn't record.
Oh.
And then they did it again.
No,
and
we're actually recording.
And it made me think of the
us?
100th episode that didn't record.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
What a
remember that?
sassy little minx.
No, it's more of a. It's more of like a public service announcement.
No, yeah, check your Zoom.
Yeah, check
Public
your
service
Zoom,
announcement,
everybody.
AKA Chad's reminder to check your stuff.
Regardless, I could not think of a better way to finish out Bourbon on the Banks
There you go.
than with, I would say, the best friends of This Is My Bourbon podcast.
That anyone's ever had.
Yeah, I already did the
I
song.
know.
I
It's
know.
good.
I know you
It's a
did.
good song.
But it's Bourbon Night. Chad and Sarah are here, and
What up?
this
you guys
has
were
been
running too, by the way.
What's that?
I saw you guys running back and forth.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
Oh no,
Oh,
we
yeah.
ran.
Oh, yeah.
We ran. We got every.
We were making some time.
We got every booth covered.
Good deal.
This
I'm sure
has
they appreciate
been
it.
one of the coolest and most fun
Oh, there you
bourbon festivals
So you
I
know
can
what?
think of recently.
I agree, and what I think is so cool is that we met some people from Illinois. We met some people from Amsterdam who watch our show, which is in and itself awesome. But
That's
we're thinking
wild.
like they have a limited time here, right? They're only visiting for
Yeah.
4 days, and because of this festival, they not only got to go to some distilleries, but now because they've walked up and down this river strip, they can try things from distilleries all over the state, the country. Like,
Yeah.
that's cool. And they're here
Yeah.
in the U.S. for a handful of days. And instead of just spending their time at one or two distilleries and learning what they can learn there, they're able to experience flavors from all over. Just because of these little tents, they can walk from one booth to the next and have the experience of traveling there, which is great. You can't get that. You cannot buy that anywhere else.
No, you can't. No, I got to try some peated bourbon, and I got to do some.
Oh, yeah,
What
dude.
did you say?
Why?
Peated bourbon?
Peated
that seems
bourbon.
like a.
Bourbon.
It seems
Yeah.
like a oxymoron or something. I don't know.
No, I got to try that.
Is that real?
Why'd you
Yeah,
do it?
it's real.
I'm kidding. It's real. It's 100% real.
Yeah, we got to try this Maysville, which is a 100% malted, rye. That's nuts. I mean, we had all sorts of different stuff.
I have to say, it's delicious.
It's pretty good.
And for someone who doesn't like peat, that's a big thing.
Well,
What's malted? It's not peated.
That's what he said.
Well, this is different. This is like the malted rye.
Yeah.
The 100% malted rye.
No peat.
Yeah, no, the peated stuff's good too,
My
actually. I was kind of
apologies.
surprised.
chaos on labels here.
Yeah, there's so much. But see, that's the thing is that there's so much we could get confused in one festival on one river walk. That's
Well, and when they
nuts.
give you a sample at the booths, and you have so many going up and down, you're bound to get confused. I gotta take notes next time.
I have been sitting here all night and I'm confused.
Yeah. I need a journal next time.
This is easily the coolest festival that is happening in Central Kentucky, just about bourbon right now. And I am so, so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, bourbon and cheese, man. I've had so much cheese today. Let's be real.
There was a handful of cheese, yes. You know what I think is the funniest is that Wendy, who helped, she literally put this thing together. And this is the first annual. I'm sure there will be a second annual because this is great. But she helped to put this on, and from the beginning, we were like, but Wendy, what will you do at an outdoor festival in August if it rains? She said, it won't rain. It will not rain
And
on
it
my
did
parade.
not.
Literally, she refused to
did
accept
not.
that
Not
it would
only
rain.
that, but
And
the temperature.
she
it's
said
been
it would be
perfect.
comfortable and it
In the
would be
70s.
sunny and it would be in the 70s. And you know what? The max today was 81, so it was in the 70s for most of the day. It did not rain. So either Wendy's a witch or a weatherman, or I don't know.
Or a
but-
witchy weatherman.
A witchy weatherman. But she knew.
Meteorologist.
From the beginning, she knew what was up. No, but seriously, she did a great job putting this together.
No,
I think it's
so, too.
amazing.
This is easily one of the most accessible bourbon festivals.
I think that's super important, Perry, because
Yeah.
a lot of other festivals charge a premium price, and you get seminars and you get exclusive access to high-tier people. But at
So-
this, you get to try all the things, and it's very accessible and approachable.
Well, this is all about the bourbon, right? Other festivals, it's about bourbon and X. It's about bourbon and Y.
Ecstasy?
Yeah, we're gonna have a
It's
huge,
about bourbon and ecstasy?
We're gonna
missed
have
that
an
booth, I'm sorry.
LSD bourbon and LSD festival
Interesting.
here. No,
That's
no,
the rumor.
I
That's a
missed
rumor
that
that was
booth.
started
it
here.
is a hard rumor.
100%
but-
false.
I missed that booth.
But here, though, it is all about the bourbon. And
about
that
the
is
bourbon.
something that I think has been missing from Central Kentucky.
Yeah, this is actually the first one I've gone to, and there's a reason for that. One, it's a mile and a half from my house, and then two, it's also just it's accessible. Like I came here, and I'm not a huge fan of big crowds, and I got to watch, I got to walk the entire border walk, and just go to a booth with my drink ticket and say, hey, I really want to try your stuff. I saw it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, and never thought I'd be able to find it. Can I have some? And they're like, do you want this and this and this? We can just give you our whole lineup if you want to try it. I mean, it's nuts.
Totally.
been wild.
Very
I don't get that-
accommodating.
I don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. This I'll say this about it. It's completely different from the other bourbon festivals that are in Kentucky. It's a they didn't try to copy any of the other established festivals that are out there. It's a breath of fresh air, literally, because it's outside.
But they just did their
Amen.
own thing.
And it's like, it's like a boardwalk. It's a river walk, and that's exactly what it is. And it's refreshing and new, and I have to applaud them for trying something different and finding a different approach to a bourbon festival.
Also, I think it's a bit romantic,
I agree.
In Frankfurt, in the heart, like literally, a lot of people consider like Frankfurt and Buffalo Trace the heart of bourbon
Oh,
country.
yeah.
You can
and
smell Buffalo Trace. from
literally,
here.
you can smell it. It's right down the road, and you've got this beautiful river, and it's a gorgeous night.
Yeah.
It just feels very romantic. And the other thing is that they make it approachable because they had cocktails, they had wine, they had beer. So if you're not us four sitting at this table who are like, give it to me neat in this cup,
Give it to me, neat,
then
baby.
it's
That's what I say when I walk up to booths.
It's a bourbon event, but it's a social event also.
yeah.
And it's great. What a great time. There was music.
I agree.
I mean, Sarah, how many new friends did we make tonight?
I mean, seriously.
A bunch.
It was insane.
Yeah.
It was like one of the
A
best
lot.
networking events I've been to that wasn't a networking event.
Well, this has been It's Bourbon Night. Thanks, Chad. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, is that you kicking us
No,
off?
I agree. It has been a really, really good networking opportunity for everybody who has been here. I mean, not only have I been able to reconnect with people who represent certain distilleries, but they are really, really weird and have thought that they should connect me and us, the podcast.
Isn't that funny when that happens?
It's really
You're
nice.
like, what? Is this an alien planet? Where have I landed?
Yeah.
Why should we all know each other? But I love the synergy that has happened.
Synergy is like the cheesiest best word to describe. No,
What a
it really
buzzword.
is. We all have, like, again, us being here and having an outlet to where people, for those of you out there who like to listen to us, God bless you. But
Yeah, thank you.
No, but seriously, you make it happen. And they recognize that.
Yeah.
We have an outlet to talk to you about these cool things that we get to experience.
For sure.
Did you have a favorite booth? I'm just at.
Did you get to go to the booth?
I know that. Did you get to go to the booth?
I got to experience the booths in a limited capacity.
Okay. Yeah.
In my limited capacity, Jim Beam
Oh.
was probably my favorite because they had a 2012.
They had a 2012, and they were
Bookers.
acting like it was no big deal. They're like, oh, it's just a Booker's. I'm like,
we
no,
just
no,
handed
no.
this
What
off.
year is
All
this
right,
from?
so here's a slight brag from Chad.
Yeah, whatever.
Subtle Chad brag.
Which is not
Coming in hot.
not normal at all.
Skip ahead 10 seconds if you don't want to hear.
Yeah, we'll put timestamps in the description.
Don't you volunteer him for
We're
that.
not as fancy as It's Bourbon Night, but
okay.
sure, yeah.
I do those when I'm drunk, just so you know.
Yeah, there you go. No, so we the guy who was at the bourbon here at the Jim Beam booth was we knew from another festival. I don't know if we should mention it because this is about Bourbon on the Banks, but he recognized us from another festival, and he was like, "Oh, you guys were so interested in Bookers at that festival.
Oh my
I
gosh.
remember you guys. You wanted to take the bottle or the box home," which I did get to go home with the box.
Oh, he remembered.
Oh my God! Here it is.
Swan.
The box.
Best timing ever. That worked out perfectly.
So this is a non-stained Booker's box. So it means it's a light wood. Wow, this is a 2012 box, which is just amazing. Thank you. That is. Oh, I tried to make it back here, and I made it back, and he was already torn down. But anyway, what I was gonna say was, at this other festival, we're like, hey, this is an old Booker's. It doesn't even have a name on it. Like, it's just the numbers. And he was like, oh, I didn't even realize that. And we looked it up and like, yeah, dude, that's like I think that was also like a 2012. And then so when he saw us tonight, he was like, hey, you were those guys who like told me that it was an older Booker's. Like, yeah, man.
Yeah, we might have to try that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to follow this dude just everywhere. He's just got older bookers just coming out of places.
130
Jim
point
Beam is like, I don't care.
8 or something. 130.8. I think it was approved or something. Ah, so good. That
Yeah.
Booker's, man, so good. Ugh, ridiculous.
So Bourbon on the Banks has been perfect.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Highly. I mean, that was just like the obvious highlight, right? The Jim
Oh,
Beam
yeah.
booth.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right? We all expect Jim Beam to kill it at a booth. Buffalo
Yeah.
Trace killed it at their booths. But like MGP did a great job
They
of
did,
showcasing
yeah.
They
their
represented.
brands. And they were so like my favorite line from the night was, we're the biggest distillery that no one knows about. And I love that because they're willing to be out there and upfront of like, we do all this stuff for people. We make great product, and yet we're in the background, unless you're like in the know in the industry, which I
True.
assume most of the people that are listening to this podcast are. And some people may disagree with me. They may be like, oh, but it's MGP, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care. If you're upfront
Oh, it's
about
from
where you got
Indiana.
it from, you do whatever you got to do to blend it, produce it.
Oh, there's
you
an
put a
art in
label on
it. We learned that today.
There's an art in it, and I don't care what you say. You say whatever you want. They make good stuff. So if you open a bottle and you're like, oh, it's MGP, I guarantee you it will be quality.
Swan.
Swan. What do
Swan.
you think?
Swan.
Weigh
No.
in, Swan.
No.
Swan.
No.
He doesn't watch it.
I love It's Drunk Night.
Yeah,
It's drunk night.
Chaz and Sarah.
I love
with
it, Sarah,
Chaz
with an
and
H night.
Sarah.
Oh, it's drunk night. We're gonna drink some more. We're gonna have another 10 or 12.
We're gonna go to the
Yeah.
after party.
We should really probably get to the after party, though.
We should.
There's
Thank
so
you,
many
guys.
We've heard of like 3 after parties.
Yeah, but the big one is at Goodwood.
Yes, that's where we're going. Because I heard,
There's
I
a
heard the food
Frankfurt
is
Bourbon
good.
Society after party.
There's some
It's
things
right
going
next
on.
door.
There's some things.
That's all I'm
I
saying.
know. I don't know. I
So
don't know.
here's the thing: if you have more time to talk about more highlights from the Bourbon on the Banks, I'm happy to do that in another episode. But I agree with you that we
Ooh.
should go
Okay.
to the after
I have a
party.
question.
Okay.
True.
What are you guys doing tomorrow night at 8 o'clock?
False.
We're gonna be going live
yeah.
on our YouTube channel.
Could we talk about Bourbon on the Banks a little
Oh,
bit more?
sure. Let's do it.
Are you sure?
I literally haven't thought that far ahead in my life.
Okay.
So sure, I
All
have
right.
no plans.
So we'll do.
Welcome, join us.
Okay. All right. So I'll come over
I
and
just
we'll
pictured
drink
we will.
the
all
Toy
bourbons
Story.
that were offered here.
Oh, that would be
That'll
nice.
be our
that's
theme.
A great
I
idea.
picture the Toy
That'll be our
Story
thing.
toys welcoming everyone into their.
It's
yes,
the club.
Yes.
The chosen one.
You're the chosen one.
I've been chosen.
Welcome.
The
All right. So
Welcome
you are listening to this post us doing a live episode with It's Bourbon Night. But
Now to say, if you want to have some ambiance,
He was trying to wrap up, Chad.
well,
who's to say?
that's a mistake.
Wait,
No.
Yeah. No. I
If
know.
you want some ambiance, put your phone light on and put an bottle of bourbon, empty or not, on top of the phone light, and it makes a lovely,
It is a lovely light.
lovely light.
It is so nice.
It really
is a
diffuses
homemade.
We have an
light
old Maysville Club
nicely.
light here from Old Pogue. It's great. I love it.
Well-
Wow,
Pro
you
tip.
guys
Pro tip.
put a Old Maysville Club
All right, we're gonna wrap up.
bottle on the light. What? Am I not supposed to
No,
be
it's
doing?
fine. We're gonna actually wrap up this episode.
Oh, okay, I got
Maybe
you.
tomorrow night we're gonna
Fine.
find out. So
Wow.
anyway, tomorrow night I'm gonna hang out with you guys for
Sure.
live stream.
Hey,
Come
let's
on
go hang
over.
out.
All right. all
Yes,
right,
let's
I'll
hang
come
out.
over.
Good.
All right. Cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, that does it for our coverage of Bourbon on the Banks. Thank you all so much for listening to the past 2 episodes. It was so much fun. I just have to say thank you so much to everybody over at Bourbon on the Banks for including us as a part of this great festival. I cannot wait for next year. I think it's just going to only get bigger and better as time goes on. Got a couple things to wrap up before we get out of here, and those are, of course, our plugs. So you know where to find us on all the social media channels. If you would like to do that, you can follow us at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you have questions or comments for us, you can send them to thisismybourbonshop@gmail.com. If you would please be so kind as to give us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes, that would be great. We would really, really appreciate it. It does help people find the show a little bit more easily. And we, of course, love having new listeners. So also, I mean, heck, if you've got somebody that you think would love listening to the show, please let them know about it and, bring them into the fold. It's a good time. You know that. You're here. You're hanging out with us. Bourbonshop.threadless.com is where you can find all of our apparel and merchandise. We are going to be having a sale going on here very, very soon for Bourbon Heritage Month, and some new designs are also going to be up there as well. So be on the lookout for those. If you are not yet a part of our Facebook group, you can head to facebook.com and search for This Is My Bourbon Group. There's only a couple questions for you to answer just to make sure that you are a listener of the show. And of course, if you're hearing this, you are. And we would be happy to have you as a part of that community. It's a lot of fun. We get to talk about all the news of bourbon that's going on, about the different episodes that we have been doing. And I think that you would have a really good time there. So again, This Is My Bourbon Group. And then last but not least, the big one, of course, is patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast. For as little as $1 a month, you can become a patron of the show. It really does help us out. There is a lot of work and editing and time that goes into creating and developing the show, and we really would appreciate it if you would be so kind as to help us out. Of course, there is no pressure for you to do that, but it does help us out immensely. And if you do decide to help us out financially, you get really cool things like bonus episodes. You get live streams just for Patreon. You also get to be a part of the Google Hangouts that we do, which are always a really good time. I think that about does it for me this week. I am so happy that you guys tuned into what has been some of the most fun that I've had on the podcast so far. We are inching closer and closer, not only to our 2-year anniversary, but also to episode 100. We are so close to it. Episode 100 is going to be so much fun. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. It's coming up real soon. Next week, though, Curtis and Swan are coming back for a home-based episode. So I hope you enjoy that. Thank you all so much for listening in this week. Thanks again to everybody at Bourbon on the Banks for a really fantastic event. I will see you next week, but until then, I'm Perry, and this is my Bourbon Podcast.
It's my Bourbon Podcast.
Bye, Future Perry.